The journey home. For longer than 2 weeks, the big dog had been gone from the farm. A dog, a country dog. He had evidently not been able to find his way out of the confusion of buildings and traffic and streets of the business section in the heart of the big town. This time, it seemed, the man had thoroughly lost him. When he'd suddenly shoved him out of the car as a traffic light changed and had gone rowing around a corner in the heavy, confusing traffic. For over 2 weeks, the big dog had been gone. From the little hen in the secret nest under the willow tree, he had ran across the field along that long day of the sudden hard rain, and he had not come back to her, not even in the long, dark, dangerous nights at the edge of the swamp. And this was the 3rd week of the little red hen, in the hidden nest under the tipped-down willow tree. The end of her 3rd week of brooding out the 5 eggs in the nest. It was a morning of one of the endless days and nights of the 3rd week. The little hen on the nest was but a bundle of skin and bones and broken, worn, untidy feathers. She was weak and starved. She now left the nest only to drink at a nearby swampy hole that outside by the hanging branches of the willow. Water she had to have. Food she had to do without because of her fear of the hawks. Once, oh, it seemed, long ago, they had been the dragonflies, the rich, lash diet of dragonflies. The little red hen had got on and then had produced the 5th and the last egg to add to the marvelous hoard in the secret nest. But the rainy day that the man had taken the dog away and lost him in town, the hard rain had dissolved the last dragonflies. And now, with the protection of the dog gone, with her food gone, and because of the hawks, the little hen was in a race. A slow, dragged out 3 weeks race between starving to death and brooding 5 chicks out of the 5 eggs. But across the swamp, tall in the top of a naked dead tree, rose the mass of untidy twigs that was the nest of the hawks. In that nest, also brooding on eggs, sat the mother hawk, the male hawk, bold, driven, made fearless by the 2 eggs and the brooding mother hawk in the nest, no longer confined himself in this hunting to the far reaches of the swamp. Daily now he patrolled the field as far as the barnyard. He kept the little hen from hurriedly running across the field to the flock to pick up the grain that the man had scattered over the barn before going to work. The real danger, the real enemy, however, was the female hawk, who, like the little hen, was also trying to become a mother. Over the rim of the big nest high in the tree, she surveyed the whole swamp. Her neat, sharp eyes always caught the first movements of the little starved hen whenever she tried to emerge from under the dense willow to strip reeds from the swamp, weeds and grasses for just a little food. The mother hawk was also hungry and starved. Often the male hawk failed in the hunt. At sight of the little hen, the hawk, bold, driven by hunger and the need to quickly to get back to the calling eggs in the nest, would sweep out over the swamp towards the willow tree, and the little starved hen would have to scuttle back under the dense cover. Then, for long moments, the hawk would hang over the tree. Her bold, eerie, reckless screamings would fall down on the little hen, would cuddle her blood, would freeze, the little hen down on the egg in the nest. There were times when the hawk actually landed in the tip of the tree and the branches would sway, the leaves would rattle as the little hen cowered in the nest under the leaning trunk. The hungry mother hawk was starving the little red mother hen to death by confiding to her willow tree. Strangely, the hawks made the days at the edge of the dangerous swamp much more fearful than the long, dark nights. But that was because of the dog. Though the little hen did not know it, and the dog, lost in town, could not know it, he was still protecting his little red hen in the night. The scent of the big dog was still trapped under the tight willow tree. The hanging branches and the leaves had enclosed the dog's scent. The little hen gave off almost no scent in her broodiness. The prowling wild animals to the night caught the strong scent of the dog long before the scent of the little red hen could reach their knee. Hunting noses, they crashed away from the dog's scent, hurried back into the swamp for their hunting. In a way, too, the man was helping the little hen through the night, even though he did not know it any more than he did the dog. Then did the dog he had banished to the town. The man had wired the barn and the barnyard for the light. Now he worked long hours every night to remodel the basement into a hen house. His hammering and his pounding and the bright light shining from the barnyard and the rain across the flat field almost to the willow tree kept most of the wild animals to the back reaches of the big swamp. The man, too, was helping his little red hen. At last, in the early hours of the night. But this was the day, perhaps the last day of the little red hen's long brooding, and the danger of hawks came back with the morning. In early dusk, while she was still invisible to the hawks, the little red hen had hurried, drank at the stale, muddy pothole just outside the willow tree, and then she had scuttled back to the nest. Now the morning wore on, but a wind sprang up over the swamp. The wind and the threatening clouds racing low over the swamp promised nothing but a raw, cold, wet day. Suddenly a hawk screamed right above the tipped-down willow tree, and the little red hen cawed in the nest. The wind brought the scream of the hawk to the dog. The wind brought his nostrils the nose of the swamp. On the high hill where he stood, the dog bedraggled tail wagged, and he started forward again. But there were other hills, many hills before they stacked down to the swamp flatness. He stumbled into the back reaches of the swamp under the naked tree of the hawks. The mother hawk peered in a wakeful silence over the edge of the nest down to the dog, but the male hawk, riding under the windy whips of the clouds over the swamp, came down from the sky in a whistling dive. His wings screeched, and his talons raked inches above the dog. The hawk climbed back to the clouds for the courage for a new attack on the dog, and the wind took his wrathful scream and stretched it across the sky. But the exhausted dog under the tree paid the hawk no attention, hardly lifted his head as the thin wing sounds whistled close above him. At last, he bestirred himself and pushed on along the edge of the swamp towards home. The dog shoved his nose under a rustling, tossing willow. The startled little hen rose up in the nest. A cry of delight ran through the dog. His tail waved a big wag for the little hen, but he could not wait. He was too starved He had to go home, had to find food. The little red hen silently settled back on the eggs. In the barnyard, a few wind-blown hens tacked awkwardly as the wind slammed against their broad tails and shoved them off, of course. But the hawk had followed the dog. The hawk screamed dreadfully in the sky. The chickens rushed up the ramp to seek safety and shelter with the rest of the flock inside the hen house. The dog stood alone in the barnyard. The dog looked perplexed at the strange barnyard and the changes the man had brought to it. And